Guess what's happening on this week's episode of the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with your friend and host, Oscar Camejo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with me, your host, Oscar Camejo. And folks, I told you this was going to be an awesome season. We're already into season 2 of the podcast. And as promised, I was going to bring on experts. And who better than to bring on than Jill Weisenberger. How you doing, Jill?
I'm great, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad. You know, when the publishing company reached out and was like, hey, we have this great author, this registered dietitian, nutritionist. She came out with a second edition of her book. I really think you should have her on the show. And I'm so glad that we connected.
Me too.
Yeah. So, folks, I want to go ahead and read to you her creds, her credentials. You know, when you have somebody like this on the show, you have to give props where props are due. You know, she's an internationally known and recognized nutrition and diabetes and pre-diabetes expert. I told you we're going to have only the best on this show. Told you. She has worked as a clinical dietitian and diabetes educator in a variety of settings, including hospital inpatient and outpatient programs, private practice, and research clinics. She currently works with people with prediabetes through her original digital course, Prediabetes Turnaround. And we definitely want to talk about that. Through coaching, speaking, and working with the media, Jill empowers people to grab control of their health one lifestyle habit at a time. Additionally, she is the author of 4 well received health and nutrition books. And we're going to be talking about one of those today, at least one of those. She's a freelance writer, a consultant, and spokesperson to the food industry. And she's a panelist for the U.S. News and World Report Best Diet Rankings. Now, I believe that probably doesn't even cover everything that you do. She's also a social media influencer and so forth. So again, welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So I definitely want my audience to get to know you. So I wanted to ask you, and for the benefit of my listeners and those who are watching, give us a little bit of background about yourself. How did you even come into this space when it comes to nutrition, dietetics, and so forth?
Okay. Well, I came into nutrition kind of accidentally. It started with managing my own weight and my own health. And when I was in college, I had never heard of such a profession as a registered dietitian. I had never thought of nutrition. I didn't know it was a field of study even, but I met somebody who was studying it and we became friends. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. But you know what, Oscar? I was getting a degree in communications
Mm-hmm.
with an expertise in advertising.
Okay.
And at being a senior in college and suddenly being interested in a science that requires math was very, very intimidating and overwhelming. So I kind of said, okay, someday I'll do that. Someday I'll do that. Well, I worked for 3 years in marketing, did not love it. And on a whim, literally a whim, I walked into the registration office at University of Florida and applied to get my master's in nutrition. And it took me 4.5 years to get a 2-year degree because I
Wow.
had to start with algebra, Chem 1, Chem 2, Chem 3, organic chem, biochem, all of that.
Right.
But so it was accidental. I just kind of followed my bliss. And it really came about with my own eating struggles. But I love it. It's the best.
Wow, that's right. Tell me about it. So now you talk about eating struggles and kind of accidentally getting into this field. Do you care to share some of those struggles so other
Oh,
people can relate?
sure. I was dealing with a lot of overweight, obesity as a probably like high school and early
Hmm.
college. And on the borderline, on the eating disorder spectrum
Mm.
as well.
Understood.
But that's what got me interested because I mean, I don't know, it just
Right.
did, and then I learned about nutrition, food not being bad, food is actually good.
Right.
That's, like, the crazy thing, because when you grow up constantly thinking about your weight or being told, "Don't eat that cookie, you had too many cookies," or something like that, when you
Right.
hear that all the time, you just think about food being bad, but food's not bad for you.
Right.
Food is amazingly good for you.
Right. Exactly.
And so it was just like a whole new world opened up for me. And, I've just, it's kind of interesting that my own messed up problem, brought me to a career I love, and the ability over the 32 years I've been in this field
Yes.
to just help thousands and thousands of people
Hmm.
enjoy eating again and, taking care of their health and their lives and feeling energetic.
Right. And that's one of the things that really resonated when I read through your book and I was reading a lot of the content that you put out. You don't come across as this person who is just an expert and but you have no experience. You actually have personal experience, and I
Yeah.
think that really lends to credibility, relatability, because a lot of the listeners that tune in, I mean, they come from all walks of life. I mean, there are people who are new to dieting, if you will, new to
Mhm.
nutrition, as at least understanding it and turning their lives around because they're going through struggles. I mean, I get calls all the time, emails, text messages, and comments. So I'm grateful to have you on the show. So now, why did you focus in on pre-diabetes and diabetes? Why niche down to that?
So that also was accidental.
Mm,
um, I was working various part-time consulting jobs while I was raising my young children, and my one of my former bosses called me up and she said, "Do you think you can pick up just 9 hours a week in diabetes
mm,
education? Because I need to cut back my hours." She was raising kids too, same ages, and I said, "Okay." And I figured, something I'll do for a while. And I've kind of expected to get bored in diabetes education
mm.
because I thought of it like, oh, it's just going to be the same thing over and over. But it's not, because every single person with diabetes is different. They
Right.
have different likes, they have different health issues, they have just different routines in their day. So there was never any boredom. And I really liked
Mm,
it. And I, sat for the exam so I could be certified, and I just stayed in that. I've really enjoyed it. It's been like 20 years or so,
mm,
maybe a little over 20 years even. But yeah, I've just really enjoyed doing it. And the reason I moved into pre-diabetes, I haven't
mm.
left diabetes, but
Correct.
I expanded to move into pre-diabetes, is because it's such a important stage to help people turn things around.
Mm.
It's a very positive stage. I think diabetes can be a very positive stage
Sure.
too,
Sure.
um, but I think prediabetes is that opportunity. I
Mm.
always say it's like an alarm bell. And
Right.
so, what do you do when you hear the alarm bell? You can either take action or not.
Wow.
And the sooner you take action, the better your outcomes are going to be. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people didn't realize, until they got the diagnosis of prediabetes, that they had it and probably had it for a few years.
Right.
And then when they start changing things up, they realize they feel better than they've felt in years, because
Right.
they'll say to me, "I didn't know how lousy I felt till I started to feel better."
Hmm.
And I've heard that from so many people with diabetes, prediabetes,
Sure.
just nutrition issues in general,
Hmm.
that we get to this level of kind of accepting that this is the way we're supposed to feel, a little,
Right.
sluggish. And then all of a sudden you have energy again. It's
Right.
nice.
Right. So, with that being said, it always puzzled me, like why, like myself, when I was first diagnosed with pre-diabetes, I was everything that you just listed, the sluggishness and so forth, going to the doctor, finding out that I was pre-diabetic or had pre-diabetes back in 2018. Why are so many people unaware particularly whether it's here in the US or across the world, about the issues concerning prediabetes, and why don't you think people take it serious enough?
Well, I think a lot of people take it very seriously,
Mm,
but the majority of people don't. And
mm,
my perspective on that is what we call it. We call it pre-diabetes.
right,
And I think a lot of people turn that into, oh, it's pre-problem. And
right,
that's true with, just the average person. And it's true with health professionals too. There's a fraction of health professionals, and not a tiny fraction of health professionals, who are overwhelmed working with patients who are very, very sick.
right,
And they think, oh, well, prediabetes, that's just not something that we have to deal with right now because we really have to deal with something else.
right.
Um, so it just gets maybe not taken seriously,
Mm,
but the American Diabetes Association, the CDC, I think it's the American Medical Association,
right,
they're doing a wonderful program. They've been doing it for years to raise awareness about prediabetes.
right,
They're doing a very good job. So I think we're getting more awareness. But, just that's just my feeling that it's because we call it pre
right.
diabetes. Some
Pre-diabetes.
people say they'd like to call it like diabetes stage 1 or diabetes stage 2, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that would be more kind of like a push to people to pay attention to it.
Right, right. And I think before the nomenclature pre-diabetes came out, it was called something else years ago. And I was listening to, or I read somewhere that it was the actual term pre-diabetes wasn't coined until I forget when it was. But do you have any insight with that?
Yeah, I remember when we had that term pre-diabetes. I don't remember what year it
Sure,
was, but it's,
sure.
15, 20 years, something like that. Um, and prior to that, we didn't have a term for that earliest stage.
Right,
But what we have always had is like impaired glucose tolerance.
right,
That means that you have higher blood sugars after eating. And then we have impaired fasting glucose, which means you have higher blood sugar levels during fasting periods.
right,
But yes, I do remember when prediabetes was termed, and it's because they were finding that diabetic complications were starting earlier than they thought.
mm,
So they moved the numbers. If I remember correctly, diabetes used to be diagnosed at a fasting blood sugar of 140.
okay,
And the same time, this is just like kind of pulling at my memory here, but at the same time that they came up with prediabetes, they lowered the threshold of diabetes to 126.
really,
And that's because they were finding complications of diabetes happening much earlier. And what
right,
we know now is that it even happens in the prediabetes stage. So people with
really,
prediabetes are getting diabetic eye disease
mm,
and other problems. Not at the same rates,
right.
but I mean, there are about 14% of people with prediabetes have diabetes eye disease.
So, with that being said, you as a diabetes educator, a nutritionist, and dietitian, what would you say people should do? Should they wait till they start experiencing these symptoms to go get their blood work done? What do you think?
Well, the guidelines today suggest that we do this with adults who are age 35.
Hmm.
But anybody who has some strong family history
Sure.
or some of the other typical things that go along with diabetes and
Hmm.
prediabetes can certainly request to be tested earlier. So that might be high blood pressure, low HDL cholesterol, high triglycerides, that type of thing, because they tend to go together.
Right.
So if you have those, whether you're 35 or younger, I would just request being tested.
Wow. And I'm glad you said that. The month of June is Men's Health Month. And usually I do a big push to encourage men in particular to go get tested, to go get checked, because sometimes for guys, we want to be Mr. Macho and, I
I
feel
know.
great. And, yeah, I'll go when something, goes wrong. And that is the wrong mentality, or that's not the best mentality to have where that's concerned. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I don't know. There are people like that who just think, I can put up with it, I can put up with it, or probably nothing's wrong, or I can deal about with it later. But in a lot of ways, time is of the essence because we have so much more control of our long-term health
Mhm.
the earlier we start taking care of it. So
Right.
it's the same thing with think like atherosclerosis or scarring of the arteries.
Right.
The longer you have exposure to, the toxins and high cholesterol, cigarette smoke, high blood pressure, the longer
Yes.
you have that, the more likely you are when you're older, to have heart disease.
Wow.
So you don't want that exposure early.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, how do you foresee yourself creating greater awareness? I know you have the new book that came out, the second edition, and we're going to get into that. But as a whole, how do you hope to make a difference when it comes to diabetes awareness?
Well, like you said, I do have the book and I'm out on social media and I have my blog and so forth. And I do a lot of public speaking. So I hope that I personally can help raise awareness, but
Sure.
it's not an individual kind of thing.
Correct.
It's got to start with family practice doctors.
Hmm.
And I think as individuals, we need to take responsibility ourselves. Certainly, everybody who okay, if you know people, then you know people with prediabetes
Right.
and diabetes.
Right.
You do.
Right.
So, I mean, I often say, like, if you just walk into a crowded, let's say a sports arena, and you count out 10 people, chances are that one of them has diabetes
Hmm.
and three of them has prediabetes. Three of them
Wow.
have prediabetes. It doesn't mean they all know it, but chances are that they have it. So, certainly from an individual level, you can think, well, a lot of people don't know it. A lot of people don't know how important it is. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't know how they should be screened. So, maybe in November for Diabetes Awareness Month or
Right.
June for Men's Health Month, you can just say, I'm going to ask 3 people to take it seriously and get tested.
Right.
So we can all do something.
Right. Good. I like that. Sometimes when they say it takes a village, sometimes we have to do it with one village member at a time so that we can
That's
make
right.
a big difference. And so I'm glad that we're
Sure.
both a part of this village, and there's so many others out there. So
Hmm.
when it comes to pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and the reversal of it, right? Because a lot of people don't know what that actually means. Well, before we get into kind of breaking down from your expertise the difference between pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, what would you say is the what is your position on the reversal of these conditions?
Um, we have seen people go into remission, many people
Hmm.
with prediabetes and people with type 2 diabetes go into remission. And when I say remission, what I mean is they'll have normal blood sugar levels,
Sure.
or if they have prediabetes, they'll have normal blood sugar levels for some period of time without the need of any medication.
Hmm.
So that would be they reversed it and it's now in remission. There's some, little controversy about the word reversal or remission,
Right.
meaning different things. When I say it, I mean the same thing.
Right.
So I think that it's ideal to try to get blood sugars back to the normal level if possible.
Correct.
It's not going to be possible for everybody,
Correct.
but if possible, that's ideal. Because, like I said, people in the prediabetes range already have some level
Right.
of eye disease, kidney disease, and nerve disease.
Hmm.
So it's not like it's a totally benign place to be.
Right.
So typically, when somebody is diagnosed with prediabetes, the goals are to prevent type 2 diabetes or delay type 2 diabetes. And certainly, I'm all for that.
Right.
But ideally, I would like to see normal blood sugar levels again.
And I'm glad you said that because when I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, right, and then later on diagnosed with full-blown type 2 diabetes, not once was I told that it can be potentially sent into remission. There was no discussion of that at all. I stumbled onto that terminology later on. Originally I was told I was going to be on medication for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
and it just didn't sit well with me. The more I learned, I was told, eat better, try to exercise. Here's a sheet of paper, just hope for the best. But you're always going to be on blood pressure medication. You're always going to be on, insulin. Um, so that was really concerning for me. And I know with some situations it's very more complicated than others.
Mhm.
I'm grateful that I was able to get my blood sugar levels, my A1C and so forth back to normal. I'm off medications completely. It's going on well over a year now. So I'm happy about that. And like you, I want to help other people as well. So, briefly, can you talk about the difference between pre-diabetes? You alluded to it before a little bit, but the difference between pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes specifically.
Sure. So prediabetes is really the same problem as type 2 diabetes. It's just
Hmm.
earlier on in the continuum.
Hmm.
So it's a progressive problem, which is why the longer you've had type 2 diabetes, the harder it is to go into remission.
Hmm.
So your best opportunity, whether you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, to reverse it and go into remission is today, because the longer you've had it, the harder it is. But they're the same problem
Hmm.
on a continuum. So when we say prediabetes, we're talking about pre-type 2 diabetes.
Correct.
And so let me just tell you what the two problems are that are always present.
Correct.
One, there is some insulin resistance. So various cells in the body use
Hmm.
insulin for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And one of them is to push blood sugar from the blood into the cells.
Correct.
So if the cells are resistant to that, they don't take up blood sugar very regularly, so the sugar just stays up too high. The other problem is what we call the loss of insulin producing ability.
Right.
So, if early on, when somebody, even prior to prediabetes, somebody has very high insulin levels and normal blood sugar levels, so the insulin is so high that it can push the blood sugar levels down to the normal range. So that's kind of like pre-diabetes.
Right.
No one has any idea there's a problem
Right.
because the blood sugars haven't gone up too high yet.
Hmm.
But as the body is less able to make more insulin, then it can't push it down all the way and blood sugar levels start to rise.
Hmm.
So early on, insulin levels are high and blood sugar levels are normal. Then insulin levels are not as high, blood sugars go up to the prediabetes range.
Right.
Then insulin levels are not as high as that, and they go up to the type 2 diabetes range.
Hmm.
And then eventually, somebody could have type 2 diabetes for so long, they cannot make insulin and they need to have insulin injections or an insulin pump.
Right. So, for the sake of those who are listening and watching, obviously the pancreas is what naturally produces insulin, right? That's
Hmm.
what our bodies are designed to do. So, there's a
Yes.
difference between the naturally occurring insulin and the medication insulin. And
Hmm.
so, when the scarring of the pancreas happens, or the pancreas starts to get overworked, that's kind of lending into what you're saying now. The insulin is, or the pancreas is not working like it's supposed to absorb all of
Right.
that blood glucose, or blood sugar as people would call it, and it remains in the bloodstream longer than it
Right.
needs to, and so forth. So I wanted to add
Exactly.
to
So
that.
early on, when the body says, "Oh, there's a
Hmm.
little
Right.
insulin resistance going on,"
Right.
the pancreas just puts out extra insulin.
Right.
And so by the time you get to the prediabetes range, you could say, well, my pancreas used to put out enough insulin and now it doesn't put out as much.
Right.
That's basically what it is.
Okay.
So there's always those two problems, whether it's prediabetes or type 2 diabetes.
Hmm.
It's that loss of the ability to make enough insulin
Right.
and the insulin resistance. So you always have both of those. It's just on a continuum.
Right, right. So, but what do you say to those people is like who say, "Well, you know what? I hear what you're saying, Jill and Oscar, but once you get pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, you're stuck with it. It's genetics, and you can't do anything about genetics, no matter how good you uh, decide to eat and what you drink and exercise is not going to make a difference. So I might as well just live it up and enjoy my life.
Oh, you're killing me, Oscar. No.
Right.
No.
Right.
What do I say to those people? I guess I'd probably say the same thing. You're killing me.
Right.
Well, genetics absolutely plays a role, without a doubt.
Right.
Genetics plays a role.
Right.
But it's not 100% of it.
Right.
And whatever hand of cards you've been dealt, you play it out as best as you can.
Right.
And so, my husband says things like, when people will say, well, I know somebody who smoked and drank and blah, 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 and they lived to be 99.
Right.
And, my husband wants to say, well, I know somebody who closed their eyes and walked across a busy street and still survived, but it's not very smart.
Right. Exactly.
You just do the best that you can.
Right.
Now, there are plenty of people who have prediabetes and type 2 diabetes who live healthy lives already and they still have it, But there are often some tweaks that we can do. So I've had so many people over the years I've worked with who don't have any weight to lose and their diets are pretty good. Their diets aren't perfect, but they're pretty good.
Right.
And they don't want to lose any weight because they don't have any extra weight to lose. And maybe they exercise, but there's tweaks with that too. So we tweak the exercise, we tweak the diet. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything you're eating is wrong.
Right. Right.
It's like you can have a good diet and still have these problems.
Right.
But you can improve your diet wherever it is, good or junk food diet,
right.
Wherever it is,
right.
you can make an improvement,
right.
And it's going to make a difference, not just in this area, but in so many areas of life. And you know what else? Sleep, I think, is very important. Sleep makes us more, poor sleep, lack of sleep, makes us more insulin resistant. So if somebody is just, maybe they have insomnia, or maybe they, just have a busy life and they don't get enough sleep, I would start prioritizing that.
Because you have to give your body enough time to recover consistently, regardless of, whether you're sleeping during the day because you work at night or vice versa. But I definitely agree with you on that. And I know some people with sleep disorders, they have certain challenges and so forth. So that's a very interesting topic. We could probably spend a whole podcast just talking about sleep. I know.
Well, there is a chapter on sleep in the book. Prediabetes, A Complete Guide. There's a whole chapter on sleep. And I think the science is getting stronger and stronger.
Is it? And so for those who are listening, the book that she mentioned is the Prediabetes, A Complete Guide, Your Lifestyle Reset to Stop Prediabetes and Other Chronic Illnesses. This is my copy. Fresh. I love it. I'm like you. I have a publishing background and marketing background. So this is a very good book. And we're going to have Jill to talk a little bit more about this book. And there's a couple of things in here I want to reference when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes, sending it into remission, specifically pre-diabetes. I want us to get into that. So Jill, a few moments ago, you talked about some of the people that you're able to help that come in to see you. So what are you finding are some of the common issues that they're dealing with, like certain risks and risk factors that they're experiencing? What would you say?
Oh, it's very common for the people I work with to not have only high blood sugar, but also to have high blood pressure, to have high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, often high LDL cholesterol. And then very often there's other things going on too, like thyroid disorders or, various types of autoimmune diseases. There's a lot of things going on with almost everybody, But it's really important that we don't look just at blood sugar. Because if all we wanted to do was look at blood sugar, we could just stop eating. Right? If you don't eat anything, you're not going to have a post-meal blood sugar rise. So but we can't just do that. We have to look at all of our health metrics, and including how we feel and other things. So it's not it's not just a blood sugar problem.
Right. And I'm glad you said that because in your book, you talked about controlling the ABCs. I love that section.
Mhm.
So, can you explain a little bit to our audience what does that actually mean? Controlling the ABCs.
Sure. So we have to think about overall heart health. It doesn't matter where you're coming from in your health journey, what diagnosis you have. If you are a person, you have to be paying attention to your heart health.
Right.
So we all have to. But people with diabetes and prediabetes do have higher risks of heart disease.
Mm,
So this group of people needs to take a doubly hard look at that.
right.
So when we talk about the ABCs, we're talking about the ABCs of heart health
Hmm.
care.
Hmm.
So A is A1C, or we're really talking about blood sugar. So
Right.
A1C is that average blood sugar level. It's an estimated average of what your blood sugar level has been over about a 12-week period.
Right. Right.
So when we're talking about A1C, we're talking about that. We're talking about blood sugar. B is for blood pressure.
Hmm.
Really important that we keep blood pressure under control. The earlier in life that you have out of control blood pressure, the more likely you are to have heart disease and stroke problems later in life.
Mm,
So I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm young, I can deal with it. What's the
right.
big deal?
Right.
No, it's that length of exposure. You're young, that's probably means more likely that you're
Sure.
going to have issues with heart
Right.
disease that if you don't control that. And then C is for cholesterol.
Right.
We want to make sure that LDL cholesterol is L stands for low, so we want that
Hmm.
number to be as low as
Hmm.
possible. And second to that, we look at HDL. H is high, and we want that number to be as high as possible.
Right. Right. So I know there are people who I talk to who come to me and ask for help. How do I start this journey? How do I start, this reversal or remission process of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes? And they're really mostly concerned with their weight, you know,
Hmm.
but they don't think about sleep. They don't think about what's going on with their heart. And I tell them, what was going on with me. My story is an open book. I let them know I used to have issues with my breathing going up and down steps. I had lack of energy. Yes, my triglycerides were off the charts. A lot of things were going on. But like so many people, I focus just on weight, right? I was 268 pounds, like I mentioned before. So, what would you say to those people about the connection, since they are focused on weight loss and their
Hmm.
body composition? What would you say is a connection between weight loss and reversing prediabetes?
So we have research studies that have actually looked at this.
Sure.
And keep in mind, not everybody with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes has weight to lose.
Right.
It's I don't know the numbers specifically, but my
Sure.
experience is about 15%
Hmm.
of people who have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes have no reason to try to lose weight.
Hmm.
Um, so so it's just not even relevant to a fairly decent fraction of
Right.
people.
Right.
But for the other people, if you choose to lose weight, if you have excess weight to lose and you want to lose weight, I am 100% for that because weight loss does make our bodies more insulin resistant.
Hmm.
So we can lose the weight, become less insulin resistant. That is a path to reversing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Weight also affects blood pressure.
Hmm.
So I think these are really good goals.
Hmm.
Couple of things I want to say about it though.
Sure.
Losing small amounts of weight make a difference to risk. So
Hmm.
we're looking at 5 to 10% of body weight makes a difference in risk. So for somebody who weighs 200,
Right.
that's only 10 to 20 pounds.
Right.
So you do not have to get to your fighting weight or your high school bikini
Right.
weight or anything like that,
Right.
to see an improvement in your health. But
Hmm.
there's one concern I have with people focusing on the weight.
Hmm.
That is because weight is an outcome. That's all it is. It's
Hmm.
an outcome. You can get weight loss by not eating,
Hmm.
by that one guy now. Kevin McGinnis is on TikTok
Mm.
talking about the McDonald's diet,
Yeah.
where he eats half portions of McDonald's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack
Right.
for 100 days. I don't know where he is now, but he's already lost more than 40 pounds.
Right.
But it's a calorie deficit diet. I mean, I
Right.
could swallow a tapeworm or get cholera and I could lose weight. But that doesn't mean those are smart ways to do it.
Right.
You're only looking at the outcome. What's
Mm.
really important is the process.
Right.
So if you pay attention only to the outcome, like I said, you could lose weight on McDonald's, you could lose weight on the jelly bean diet or the broccoli diet or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
But by paying attention to the process,
Mm.
you will lose weight.
Right.
And then you have all these healthy behaviors that are going to sustain you for your life.
Right.
So I rarely ask people to put the emphasis on the weight, even though we might have a weight loss goal.
Right.
May or may not.
Right.
But like I say, by putting the emphasis on the process, how am I going to get 3 meals a day that are balanced? How do I get to the grocery store at least once a week? How am I going to get some meals on the table that my family likes? Where in my day am I going to put in my exercise? That's where all the time and effort should be going, is in those things.
Right.
And then the weight comes.
Mm.
But don't focus on the weight.
Right. Exactly.
Because the weight may come, but what do you have?
Right, because I remember I was getting ready for my 30th high school anniversary. Graduation, right? And I was so determined. I was like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds by this 30th, high school reunion. That's what it was. And so I was just focused on, I want to beat that goal. But in that process, I was thinking like, okay, but what happens after the reunion? Yeah, I went, I lost the weight, but I started thinking about nutrition. What's really going on inside my body? I was losing the weight, but I was still on high blood pressure medication. So I'm like, there's still something going on the inside, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say also, when weight is lost very, very quickly,
Right.
particularly in an unhealthy way, we have loss of muscle mass. And that is just so detrimental.
Right.
Particularly as we get older. So, I mean, if you're in your 30s and you lose a few pounds of muscle because of a crash diet,
Right.
and then you do it again in your 40s, it's like, by the time you're 70, you're
Right.
not going to be able to get out of a chair without help.
Right, exactly. And so with that being said, there's a section in your book that I wanted to highlight. And again, the book is a Prediabetes, a Complete Guide by the one and only Jill Weisenberger. How did I pronounce that? How do you pronounce it?
Weisenberger. You said it right.
Weisenberger. Okay.
Weisenberger.
So she has a section in here. It says, Are obesity, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes lifestyle diseases? And she delves into this, but I want you to kind of talk about the lifestyle. Is it a lifestyle? Are these lifestyle disorders?
Well, I tend to think of it as health problems that have lifestyle solutions. So we often hear about them as lifestyle diseases, but we already alluded to the fact that genetics does play an important role.
Right.
And there are plenty of people who have healthy lifestyles and still have these problems. So it couldn't possibly be only a lifestyle. That's not possible.
Right.
But also the term itself, it's a lifestyle disease. That sounds a little bit demeaning.
Right.
So I don't like that expression. But there are lifestyle solutions. But that's the same thing if you have type 1 diabetes, which is completely unrelated to lifestyle and 100% an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
But there are still lifestyle solutions.
Right.
And I think when we can talk about that, we put ourselves in a place of power.
Right.
Because that means we can take control. So in that respect, I like saying lifestyle when I tag it to solutions, but not when I tag it to disease.
Especially because you have a lot of folks who want to blame the person who's overweight or who's obese.
Yes. And that is a conversation, Oscar, we could have that would last a week.
Right.
Because Obesity is not a matter of being lazy
Right.
or being sloth-like or
Right.
sitting on the couch eating too much. It is
Right.
so much more complicated
So
than
much
that.
more. Right. And I'm getting ready to do a podcast episode on SAD, the standard American
Mhm.
diet, and just kind of delving into what that is and so forth. So, what would you say, and what would you say to people who want to deal with the struggle that they do have with losing weight? They know, hey, I do want to lose weight. I do want to get the pounds off of me. Yes, I want to reverse pre-diabetes. I want to keep the weight off, but how would you recommend that they go about achieving lasting results?
Well, I think there's a lot of options. So there's
Sure,
not like a particular way to
sure.
go. I'm also a big fan of people working with their healthcare provider and making
Hmm.
appointments with registered dietitians, um, or a registered dietitian who's also a certified diabetes care and education specialist.
Right,
So I think that is always, an option for people who have access to that.
right.
I think that's a good option for people who have access to that. But again, I would go back to putting the emphasis on the process.
Mm,
So I think it's great to say, okay, I have a goal. I'd like to lose 10 pounds. And I would think in steps of that,
right,
10 pounds, not 80 pounds.
right,
I'd like to lose 10 pounds and I'm going to go about it doing these things. And then
right.
put your effort on doing those things very, very well.
Mm,
And it is fine that it takes time. It's not a race.
right,
So be the tortoise, not the hare, I
right,
guess.
right,
Take your time and make it work. But you could be the hare and lose that 10 pounds in a matter of a couple of weeks, but
right,
you've wreaked havoc on your body and
right,
haven't learned anything, haven't taken care of yourself. So I would definitely go, like I say, with the process.
right.
Now, specifically when we're talking about blood sugar control, there's the
Hmm.
first things like the low hanging fruit. Everybody's going to have different low hanging fruit.
Right, right,
But to me, I think if you're drinking sugary sodas or sugary beverages of any kind, that's low hanging fruit. That is one
mm,
thing. It may not be easy to give up, but it's one thing that can have huge impact.
mm,
Maybe the low hanging fruit for you is that you're very sedentary.
right,
And so you could take 3 10-minute walks, one after breakfast, one after lunch, one after dinner.
right.
So I would pick whatever is like the easiest for you
Mm,
as well as the most impactful.
mm,
So some combination of simple and impactful.
right.
And there's just a lot of ways to go.
And so, with that, because there are a lot of options out there, how would you caution people against some of these fad diets, these diet trends that promise the world, lose 50 pounds in 30 days, quick, fast, and in a hurry? Can you expound on that a little bit? And what's your thoughts
Yeah, you're
on
stabbing my nutritionist heart here,
right,
Oscar. um, okay, I think that we just have to understand that there are people out there who are going to try to sell us something
right.
that isn't going to be to our benefit. So we have to look at it through the lens of let me do my homework, let me be cautious.
Mm,
But number one, if somebody is promising easy weight loss, we got to know right then that it's a
right,
scam.
right,
Because if there were an easy way to lose weight, do you think there would be a single person left trying to lose weight?
right,
If an easy way existed,
right.
every single person would be slim.
Mm,
And so there is no easy way. That is number one. Understand that. So steer clear of anything that promises you,
hmm.
some rapid, easy weight loss.
Right,
I would also steer clear of anything that to ask you to give up all kinds of health boosting foods.
right,
If you're not supposed to eat this long list of foods,
right,
I don't know. To me, that doesn't sound like a very healthy or sustainable way.
right.
Um, so how would you pick something that's good for you? You know what I really like the best, Oscar, and
What?
you can you can personalize this to
Sure.
whatever that you'd like. But when it comes to like what to eat, I like just the simple old plate method.
Mm,
Take an average size plate, a nine
right.
inch plate,
Nine
not
inch.
one of these big
Right.
platters, but
Right.
just a 9-inch plate. divide it in half. Half of it is non-starchy vegetables, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
broccoli, carrots, radishes, asparagus,
Spinach. Right.
zucchini, tomatoes, those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. And
Mm-hmm.
divide the other half of your plate into a protein-rich food and a starchy food.
Mm.
So the protein-rich food and the starchy food are about the same amount.
Right.
The non-starchy vegetable is double that.
Mm.
So it doesn't have to be a plate. Just think about if you were having a stew. So you
Right.
look into your bowl and you think, well, I have about as much starch as I have protein.
Right.
So let's say potato and beef.
Right.
And about the same amount of non-starchy vegetables. So I'll have a salad
Right.
to make that non-starchy vegetable twice as much.
Wow.
And it can be anything you want. You can have it as a casserole, a soup, a sandwich, a bowl, a plate. And if you like fish, you eat fish. If you don't like fish, you eat something else. If you like tofu, you eat tofu.
Right.
So you can make it anything you want.
Right. And by the way, so I know and I'm learning how much you love cooking and you love talking to people about cooking and nutrition. Folks, did you all know she has a special recipe for, I think it's blueberries and fudge or something that you had?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I have to try this because I love both blueberries and I love fudge. So you definitely have to check her out on her social media. And she's going to talk to us about that in a little bit and how to follow her on social media when we get to wrap up. Now, Jill, you have to tell us, as in your field of nutrition, you love cooking, tell us about your experience in Hungary with the Chef Parade.
I don't know how you knew about that. I guess it was on social media. Okay, so I have this thing that I love to travel,
Mm-hmm.
and I love to experience a country through its food, and not just a country, but other regions of the U.S. I really want to experience through its food, so I try to cook wherever I go. And I was with a group of other nutrition professionals for a small conference. And I think the conference started at 6 p.m. or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I arranged for a group of us, maybe I don't know, 12 or 15 of us, to go to a cooking school. So they took us to a market and showed us the various food, and we bought the things, and we came back and we cooked it and we ate it. And it was just so much fun. And yeah, Chef Parade was a great choice for us. I've done that in China.
Wow.
I cooked in Ireland, and I just did that in Italy recently. I went on a food extravaganza through Milan and Barcelona.
Nice.
I decided that I had been to Italy before,
right,
and I'd been to Milan before. So I didn't need so much to see all the sights,
right,
but I wanted to experience it through food. So I hired somebody to take me to the grocery stores and restaurants and stuff like that. And I hired somebody else to teach me some cooking. It was great.
Wow. See, and that's what I love about your content and just hearing you talk about it, because to travel abroad and to learn different cultures, learn how to cook in those areas, I think that's so great. And you know what? Food can be fun.
Food is fabulous.
Right.
See, that is the whole thing that changed in my life. Like I said, I grew up, food is bad.
Right.
Food is, something, you indulge in it because it tastes good, and that's bad.
Right.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Right.
That is no fun.
Right.
But when you look at it, it's like, I have all these different things to enjoy.
Wow.
And look at these beautiful berries and all the nutrients that they're giving me.
Right.
And look at how I can take these beautiful blueberries and mix them with delicious chocolate.
Yes.
And you don't have to eat this much.
Right.
Excuse me. Okay. You don't have to eat this much because you've just given yourself permission to eat it because it's delightful. You're not trying to like, oh, can I get away with this?
Right.
It's like you give yourself permission because it's delightful.
Right. How do you feel about air fryers?
I haven't used one before. But I mean, I've had food from them.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter has one. I think she really likes it for things like Brussels sprouts and cauliflower.
Right.
I don't know, but people who have them love them.
Right.
I just don't really see the need for me personally,
Right. Right.
but like if I had one, I would enjoy playing with it, I think.
Yeah, because there's some people that come to me, they're like, and they're saying, Oscar, I'm just too busy. I'm a working professional. My family's busy. And by the time we get home, we just don't have enough time to cook. And I know in your book, you have tons of healthy eating recipes and how to even get started. So for
Mhm.
those people who are like, you know what, this is just too complicated. It's easier for us to just grab something from the healthy option at the fast food, but I can't see us really turning things around. What would you say to those folks?
Well, I might start off by talking about one of my former patients
Mm,
who had a habit, a routine of every single night, so we're talking 100% of the time, going to fast food to
mm,
pick up dinner. On
really?
her way home, I think she had a long commute, and she would go to fast food every single day.
Mm,
And she had great ideas. I'm gonna, lose all this weight in this amount of time, and I'm gonna never do this and never do that, and blah 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 blah. Well, this is somebody who never cooked ever at
mm,
home. And what are we going to do with that?
right.
So what we did is in the beginning, we took I remember doing it with a piece of paper like this. We
Mm-hmm.
folded the paper into 4 pieces.
Right.
We took the 4 fast food restaurants that she went to most often.
Mm,
We looked up online for the best options that she would like there. And that was her personal menu.
mm,
So if she went to McDonald's, she had a choice of those 4 options. If she went to Taco Bell, she had a choice of those 3 or 4 options, that kind of thing.
right.
And so that was a way of her easing in to making better choices.
Mm.
And then, now she cooks at home most of the time.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was just, I think baby steps
Mm,
are the way to go. And for her, that was the perfect baby step. So instead of having all the options at McDonald's and having to make a choice and look at
right.
that big menu, she just looked at her own personal menu
Right.
and made her choice from that. And then, then it was maybe taking home just like a fast food sandwich and having it at home with a salad and
Mm,
another vegetable.
mm,
And so she just made those baby steps, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's ideal.
right.
So, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of fast food,
Right.
but I mean, this was a way that it worked for her, and now she is so much healthier,
Nice.
and she's not eating fast food very much at all.
Nice.
But use convenience foods. Get a list of what I call back pocket
Mm,
recipes or back pocket meals. These are things that you can whip up with
sure.
pantry staples.
Okay.
So, I know when I'm super busy, I can make scrambled eggs, grits, and some vegetable. I can roast it or
Right.
take it out of the freezer and do something with it.
Mm,
So I know that that's like a standard. I have another one that I do it with white kidney beans or cannellini beans,
mm,
and I roast them with tomatoes and different vegetables, whatever vegetables I have, and some feta cheese. So I just know that there are some things
right.
that I can always do. And I'm also getting ready to be exceptionally busy. So
Mm,
I'm thinking ahead now, what can I put in my freezer?
mm,
So I can have a nice meal without having to take the time to do it. So I'm not a huge meal prepper in that
mm.
sense. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people like to do that. Maybe on Sunday they'll do meal prepping for the whole week or something like that. I take a different approach to meal prepping. I
Sure.
just maybe will cook 2 trays of roasted vegetables instead of one, so then I
Mm,
have something left over.
right.
Or I'll cook a big pot of black bean soup instead of a small pot of
Right.
black bean soup. So in that way I usually have something that's already ready to go.
Okay.
But so yeah, think about meal prepping. Think about convenience foods. Think about having back pocket meals. So let's just say you thought you were going to get home early today
Right.
and had plenty of time, and you were going to make this nice meal that you've been looking forward to, but there's a traffic accident and you get home late.
Right.
What do? Well, I mean, you could, go to Pizza Hut or, call DoorDash or whatever. But if you have some things in your mind or written down on a card, what are your back pocket meals that you can always pull together? What
Right.
about a tuna melt?
Mm.
Pull a piece of bread out of the freezer, get a can of tuna out of the pantry, slice a tomato, put a piece of cheese on top,
Right.
and you've got the start of a meal.
Right. Right. And I'm
You just have to know what those things are.
Right, right. And I'm glad you said that. One thing that I had to do for myself was get rid of everything in my house that I knew was challenging for me. That was the
Mhm.
cookies. So I stopped buying the cookies, the chips, the sodas. You mentioned about liquid calories earlier. I got rid of a bunch of things. That was me personally because I knew every night I had to have something sweet.
Mhm.
It was Pop Tarts or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And sometimes I would just always be snacking. Even after having dinner or lunch, I just had this bad habit. For me, it was a not so good habit of just
Mhm.
constantly snacking. And, that did contribute to a lot of things. And once I started doing what you were talking about, which was simplifying, making eating I made it easier for me to eat healthier. I
Mhm.
cleaned up my environment, if you will, and meal prepping. I'm the same way. I don't do the meal prep, but I do. Let's say if I have salmon, I may buy a big slab of salmon, cut it up, season it, have it ready to go. So Monday, Wednesday, and maybe Friday, I may have some salmon. I like
Mhm.
lamb. But the goal of basically what you're saying and what you cover in your book is to make it simple, still enjoy eating and have fun with it. And speaking,
Yeah, I
go
always
ahead,
say make easy your best friend.
make easy your best
Go for
friend.
go for
All
easy.
right, did y'all hear that? Make easy your best friend. Awesome, awesome. So we're going to wrap up today. Now, in her book, she has tons of simple recipes, right? To make things easy to help you along the way. But I wanted to take a different approach or get your thoughts. Why did you include even preparing to do the lifestyle transformation when it comes to eating? And you put in here a bunch of recipes and food choices. Why? Is this just another cookbook? You
It is
know?
not a cookbook.
Right,
It is definitely not a cookbook. There's
right,
about 25 recipes. I'm not
right,
sure exactly the number. So it's not a huge number of recipes,
right.
but they are examples of the
Mm,
things that I talk about.
hmm.
So I talk about how you can make your meals maybe lower in calories and lower in carbohydrates.
Right.
So I give examples through recipes, or I think I have in there like I do have a lentil chili
Yes.
in there.
Yes.
So talking about how you can get lentils, which have wonderful resistant starches in them
Mm,
that help with blood sugar control.
right.
So how you can use lentils instead of beef in something. So there's a
Right.
lentil chili recipe in there.
Hmm.
There are all the recipes really try to just give a lesson. Or there's
Right.
a gazpacho in there, which is a cold tomato
Hmm.
vegetable soup.
Hmm.
And I have that in there because they're all non-starchy vegetables. It makes like this much, and it's so low in calories and so filling that my family just runs through it in the summer.
Mm,
I just leave it in the refrigerator, and I can always start a meal with that and get that edge off my hunger, or I can
mm.
even have it as a snack in the afternoon. So that's what the recipes are there
Oh,
for.
good.
It's to give you guidance on how to make the foods you already like to make
Mm,
more healthful,
mm.
or how to try things that maybe you have never tried before.
Wow. And to make easy, what was it again?
Make easy your best friend.
Make easy your best
Make
friend.
easy your BFF, best friend forever.
That's right. That's right. Well, Jill, how can people get a hold of you if they want to follow you on social media and actually contact you to learn more about, reversing pre-diabetes and so forth? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure, they can come to my website, which is jillweisenberger.com. So if you can spell my last name, you can find me, jillweisenberger.com. You can also find me on social media as Nutrition Jill. So
Nutrition
I'm
Jill.
on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest as Nutrition Jill.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can find the book in any bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Sure.
would love to hear from people. So I love it when people read my blog posts or read my books
Sure.
and contact me and give me some feedback. It really makes me happy to get that.
Yeah, and I'll include links to all of that information in the show notes, everyone. So definitely make sure you, after this podcast, you actually go down and look in the show notes to get information by Jill and how to contact Jill. So, Jill, one last question. What's on the horizon for you in the future when it comes to diabetes education and so forth?
I really like teaching online.
Mm,
So I think I'm going to do more online digital courses.
mm.
I really, really like that. Also, Oscar, I'm going to be a grandma
Wow, you're too young to be a
for the
grandma.
first time. I'm very excited. We're going to have
Wow.
another little girl in the family.
Oh,
So I'm going to babysit 2 days a week. I've
okay.
already volunteered or pushed my way in to do
Right.
that. I'm not sure which it
Right.
was.
Okay.
But yeah, when it comes to diabetes education and prediabetes education, I really like the online courses that I've been
Mm,
developing and teaching. And I do have another book that needs a second edition. It's
mm.
Diabetes Weight Loss Week by Week. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do a second edition on that one.
Wow. Yeah, I actually listened to the audiobook of that.
Oh,
Yeah, I believe it was the audio book recently. Yeah, actually, about a week or so ago, I stumbled onto the
oh,
week by week. So I told you I'm a fan, Jill.
oh, well, thank
Yeah,
you.
I
I'm a
really,
fan too. I'm a fan
yeah.
of yours.
Thank you. Well, Jill, you're welcome to come on the show anytime. If there's
I
anything
would
that,
love to come back.
oh yeah, and then we can drill down on some other topics. Okay. Well,
Super.
there you have it, folks. An awesome interview with my new friend in the diabetes education space, nutrition space, Jill Weisenberger. Thank you so much, Jill, for being here. I really
My
appreciate you being
pleasure.
here today. So until next time, folks, like I always say, hey, stay focused, keep moving, never go back, leap forward, bounce back because you can, my friend. And above all else, trust God. You got this. I believe in you. Be sure to visit the website at www.beatingdiabetieslifestyle.com for access to free resources and other information that will help you along your journey. If you would like to submit a question or a comment about the show or to learn more about the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle, you can always email me at hello@beatingdiabeteslifestyle.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Beating Diabetes Lifestyle Podcast with Oscar Camejo. We hope you enjoyed this episode. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for motivational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care by a physician or other healthcare professional or qualified fitness instructor. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. If you're looking for help on your journey, seek a qualified medical practitioner. It's important that you utilize someone who is a trained, licensed healthcare professional who can help you on your journey toward good health.